All right. So, what if corporations like really took over? I mean, not just influencing things, but controlling how we heal. What if the stuff we use today to feel better was like totally banned?
That's a pretty wild thought, right? But it's exactly what we're diving into today. You sent us these excerpts from The Last Reiki Hunter, this fictional book by Steve Zimkowski. And it's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's not your typical light reading, that's for sure. This book imagines the USA in the early 21st century where corporations basically become the government. Like,
Uh,
they're not just lobbying anymore, they're calling all the shots.
and the scary part is it's not totally unbelievable, right? I mean, look at how much influence they have now. But in this story, things get really bad. Environmental disasters, melting polar caps, sea levels rising like crazy.
Florida and California gone. Poof. Underwater.
Exactly. And Chicago, of all places, becomes the new capital. They divide the whole country into these 6 sectors, each run by a different corporation.
It's like something out of a dystopian movie. But it gets even creepier. Within these sectors, the corporations don't just control the economy and the workforce. They also decide what kind of health care people can access.
And guess what? Alternative medicine, holistic practices, anything that's not their approved surgical procedures and pharmaceuticals, banned, completely outlawed.
So if you wanted to, say, try acupuncture or meditation, you could be arrested.
Or worse, that's where these so-called medical hunters come in. They're like the enforcers, tracking down anyone who dares to practice or even seek out these forbidden healing methods.
And among these hunters, we have the Reiki hunters, specifically targeting those who practice Reiki. Now, just to clarify for our listeners, the book explains Reiki as this oriental energy work. It's about using energy for self-benefit and helping others.
Yeah, and it seems like the Western version in this world is focused more on the treatment aspect of Reiki, like hands-on healing. The book also mentions how there are all these different styles of Reiki that have developed over time.
So we've got this ancient healing art that's now a criminal offense in this messed up future. And at the center of it all is the trial of the last Reiki hunter. This story really pulls you into this whole dystopian world and makes you think, how did things get so bad?
Right, and that's exactly what we're here to explore. We want to break down this fictional world, understand the role of this Reiki hunter, and see what twists and turns come up during his trial.
Our mission basically is to use this story to learn something about power, control, and how alternative practices can survive even in the face of extreme suppression. So listeners, get ready for a deep dive into The Last Reiki Hunter.
Let's start with how these corporations got so powerful in the first place. The book doesn't sugarcoat it. It describes the slow process where politicians basically sold out, trading their power for, well, probably money and favors.
So basically corruption, right? Classic power grab.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. They gave corporations the right to raise their own armies. Like private armies. That's a game changer, right?
That's insane. No wonder the government collapsed.
It's not that different from some periods in history, though, if you think about it. Like the East India Company, they had their own military force. And it definitely led to some questionable outcomes.
Yeah, private armies, not a great track record, historically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So these corporations get their armies, they've got the politicians in their pockets. What do they do next?
They create these centralized living areas in each sector. Basically, they round everyone up and make them work like crazy hours. We're talking 18-hour workdays for adults, 14 hours for kids.
That's just brutal.
It gets worse. They pay them, but then that money goes right back to the corporations for food, housing, clothing, and even medical care. So they're trapped in this endless cycle of debt.
That's messed up. It's like modern-day slavery.
Pretty much. They even changed the Pledge of Allegiance to, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United Corporations of America and to the jobs which they provide. It's all about loyalty to the corporations, not to the country.
Yeah, it's like they completely erase the idea of individual freedom.
And that's where the medical control comes in. Doctors who are on board with the corporations are treated like royalty, while everyone else is forced to undergo surgery and take their drugs, whether they need it or not.
It's like they're addicted to control, like they can't stand the idea of people healing themselves naturally.
Exactly. And to enforce this whole system, they create these specialized units of medical hunters.
So, like, different hunters for different types of healing?
Yeah, you've got hunters who go after mind-body practices like meditation or yoga. Then you've got those who target people using herbal remedies or other plant-based medicine.
And of course, the Reiki hunters going after the Reiki practitioners.
Right. And the penalties are harsh. You get caught practicing any of this stuff, it's prison time, maybe even execution. They weren't messing around.
So this whole system, this corporate nightmare, it went on for 100 years.
A whole century. It's hard to even imagine that kind of oppression lasting for so long. But eventually, it all fell apart.
Why? What happened?
Well, they got so greedy, they squeezed everyone so dry that people literally couldn't afford to buy the corporation's products anymore. They destroyed their own market.
Wow, that's like economic suicide?
Yeah, it's a lesson in taking things too far, I guess. Anyway, with the economy in shambles, people finally revolted, overthrew the corporate government, and formed the new United States of America.
About time.
Yeah, and they didn't forget what those hunters and torturers did. They brought them to justice. Which brings us to the trial of Gavin, the last Reiki hunter. It's a pretty symbolic moment for this new nation.
So let's head into the courtroom. It's a makeshift setup in what used to be Chicago. The judge, Chloe Ling, is pretty impressive. She learned law all on her own from books she found after the collapse. Talk about dedication.
Right. And the prosecutor, Ariana Fugate, she's self-taught too. It shows you how much people value justice in this new world. And get this, no one wanted to defend Gavin at first. It was William Lawrence, a guy with no legal background, who stepped up to make sure Gavin got a fair trial.
That's pretty brave, considering Gavin was part of the whole oppressive system.
It shows they're trying to do things differently now. They're committed to due process, even for someone like Gavin.
So what about Gavin? What's he like?
Well, when they found him, he was out in the wilds in those areas that were destroyed by the corporations. He's old, unkempt, doesn't even know what year it is.
Oh, wow. Sounds like he's been through a lot.
Yeah. During the questioning, it comes out that he's an orphan, no last name. He was raised in this Reiki Hunter division by some guy they only called General. They figure he was born sometime around 2085, which would make him about 75 years old now.
So he's been doing this for a long time.
Since he was a kid, basically. It's all he knows.
Yeah.
And they didn't train them to kill Reiki practitioners just to capture them.
Capture them? For what?
We'll get to that. But it's interesting, Gavin says there wasn't much communication between the different medical hunter divisions. They each operated independently, like in their own little bubbles.
That's weird. You'd think they'd work together.
Yeah, but it probably made it harder for people to resist, you know? They couldn't get a clear picture of what they were up against.
Smart, but cruel.
Mm-hmm.
So how did they train these Reiki hunters?
It was years of intense training. Learning to spot the signs, track people down, identify safe houses. They'd start by going out with more experienced hunters and gradually learn the ropes.
Sounds intense. It shows they were serious about wiping out any kind of alternative healing.
Absolutely. And Gavin, he claims to be the last Reiki hunter. He says all the others are dead, and it's been 15 years since his division was shut down. He's got this tattoo, too, a Reiki symbol with 2 swords through it, dripping blood.
That's a pretty dark reminder of what he used to do.
Yeah, it's like a symbol of the violence they inflicted on Reiki. But how did they even find these people? Well, Gavin describes these 5 Reiki symbols that were used back then.
5 symbols.
Yeah, they've been around since 1922. The first one is Choku Rei, representing earth energy. Gavin says they used to look for it everywhere, on clothes, walls, even rocks.
Wow, they were really looking hard.
And he associates it with the sound Hoku-ai. They were trained to recognize the sound, too, not just the symbol.
That's like, what were they eavesdropping on people meditating?
Probably. Anything to catch them. Then there's Seiheki, representing heaven energy. That one's Eiki.
Okay, got it. What's next?
The third symbol is Han Shalom Zi Shonen. It means oneness. And Gavin says it comes from Shinto.
Interesting. So he actually knows something about the history of Reiki.
Yeah, even the hunters had some understanding of what they were trying to destroy. Then there's Daikomyo, the master symbol, meaning great being of the universe.
That's a powerful name.
Yeah, it represents creative energy, regeneration, rebirth. And its sound is Aikoyu.
Aikoyu? Okay, I'm trying to remember all these. What's the last one?
The last one is Raku. It looks like a lightning bolt, and it's used for grounding energy and giving more original energy, as Gavin puts it.
So 5 symbols, all with different meanings and sounds. It's almost like a whole language.
It is a complex system, yeah. And the corporations wanted to wipe it out completely.
So where did they look for these symbols?
Everywhere. On doorways, altars, jewelry, tattoos. But Gavin says as people got wise to the hunters, they started hiding the symbols better, making them harder to find.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah, they were always adapting, finding ways to keep their practices alive. And to make things worse, the hunters got bonuses for finding these symbols, especially if they captured a Reiki master.
So it was like a bounty system.
Exactly. It turned this whole thing into a profit-driven hunt. But they didn't just rely on symbols. They were also trained to notice other things, like hand gestures, the way someone held their palms.
Like, what if your palms are facing out, you're a Reiki suspect.
Basically. And they'd look for objects that might be used as substitutes, like dolls or something, to represent the person receiving healing.
That's kind of spooky.
And get this, they even targeted people who seemed too calm, too peaceful. Like, in this super stressful world, if you weren't freaking out, they suspected you were using Reiki to stay zen.
Wow, so even inner peace was criminalized.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up when you think about it. But then something happened to Gavin that changed everything. He was sent to capture this woman named Angelique in the South Central area.
Oh, this must be where things get interesting.
It is. He's using his usual tricks, blending in, trying to find her, but she's really good at hiding. She's out in the wild territories, far from the controlled areas.
Sounds like a tough target.
Yeah. And then out of nowhere, he gets attacked by wolves.
Wolves. Like wild wolves.
Yeah, real deal. And Angelique, she comes out of nowhere and chases them off. Then she takes care of him, even though he's supposed to capture her.
That's unbelievable.
I know, right? And while he's recovering, he sees her practicing Reiki using crystals, and he's just blown away by her calmness, her compassion. It's totally opposite to everything he's been taught.
It must have really shaken him up.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Angelique knew who he was. She saw his mark, the tattoo, but she still helped him. When he asked why, she just said, "Because you are a human being."
Wow, that's powerful.
It is. And Gavin, he's filled with shame. He realizes that everything he's believed, everything he's done has been based on lies. Angelique offers him shelter in her cabin, a place where he can hide and maybe start to heal.
It's like she saw the good in him, even when he couldn't see it himself.
Exactly. So Gavin goes into hiding, living in isolation for a while. Then he runs into some young hunters who tell him the corporate government is gone, the people won.
So he's a free man, right?
Not exactly. He gets arrested because of his mark, that tattoo. They put him on trial. But something's different now. The people in the courtroom, they don't see him as a monster anymore. Some are even crying, listening to his story.
They're starting to understand what he went through, the brainwashing, the control.
Yeah. And then comes the big twist. William Lawrence, the guy defending Gavin, reveals that Angelique was his mother.
No way.
Yeah. And not only that, she was a Reiki master, a direct descendant of Mikao Su, the guy who started modern Reiki.
Wow, so it all comes full circle.
It does. Lawrence is actually grateful to Gavin for not arresting his mother. It shows how personal this whole thing is, how much pain and loss was caused by the corporations.
So what happens to Gavin?
Well, Judge Ling, she decides to let him go free. She says he's shown remorse, and she even mentions Angelique's compassion. But not everyone's happy about it. Some people are furious. They want him punished.
It's understandable, right? He did some terrible things.
It is. But then, just when things are getting really heated, Bernard, the former head guard of the prison system, steps up to say something. And what he reveals changes everything.
What does he say?
He tells everyone that the Reiki practitioners and masters who were arrested, they weren't actually executed. The corporations lied about that.
They lied. But why?
Because they were using those healers. The wealthy corporate families, they'd gotten sick from all the drugs and surgeries, and they were desperate for something else. So they secretly kept the Reiki practitioners as their own personal healers.
Oh my God, that's so hypocritical.
It is. It shows how corrupt and self-serving those corporations really were. After the collapse, they let most of those healers go. Some even left the country. And the people in the courtroom, they're stunned. They immediately start thinking about their own missing loved ones, wondering if they were among those secret healers.
Wow, talk about a bombshell.
Yeah, it completely changes the mood in the room. And at the end, William Lawrence offers Gavin a place to stay. It's a moment of healing, a sign that even after all this pain, they can move forward.
That's a beautiful ending to a pretty dark story.
It is, but it's also a reminder that unchecked power is dangerous, and we have to be careful about who we give control to, especially when it comes to our health.
So listeners, what do you think? How does this story make you feel? Does it resonate with anything going on in our world today?
And here's a final thought to ponder. If something like Reiki, this ancient healing art, could survive a century of suppression, what else might be out there? What other hidden knowledge, what other practices are waiting to be rediscovered?
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a wild ride, but hopefully we've all learned something from it. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop seeking the truth, no matter how buried it may be.